Hey, just want to give y'all a quick update on some of the different things that have been happening. This past Saturday, we did a parent-student day at the warehouse, and what we did it was for My Life Matters kids. We don't have any contact with the parents because all the club happens after school when parents show up, pick kids up, and that's the extent of the conversations we get to have. And so what we did for the first time is did a parent-student day where we invited parents and kids out to the warehouse from 11 to 1 and had a wonderful turnout. It was a lot more than we expected for the first time we did something like this because the kids couldn't come if the parents didn't come. And that's just a big deal for the kids that want to come, but a lot of the parents aren't committed to coming and being involved. And so it was step one in getting them to do some things with the ministry, and regardless of whether it starts off with something as simple as doing snacks or coming to a club and hanging out one day, to where we can eventually have some really kind of deep conversations with parents, and the way that they raise their kids and the way that they disciple their kids and the way that they just lead their kids closer to God, because most of us know that it's tough for a kid to grow in their walk with God if their parents aren't encouraging them. And so just one of the small fruits from that is one of the parents came Saturday, and then Tuesday I saw him at club, and she was the first parent there, so I had a good conversation with her. And she wants her daughter, who's in middle school, to now get involved, but her daughter kind of doesn't want to go. So I was able to encourage her to bring her daughter, and she listened a lot more because the relationship that we started on Saturday, and so she might bring her daughter to club, and she knows that she's not in church and she's not raising her kids under the Word of God, and so I was able to invite her to attend the church and to let her know more about it. And one thing that we've done is start a Facebook group for the My Life Matters, and she's on that. And so our conversations have been able to keep going because I posted a little picture of the craft that we were doing, and when her daughter brought the craft home that afternoon, she was able to say, "Oh, they were so cute. It was really neat." And so the conversation and that relationship has been able to grow via some of the things that we've been trying to do. And the second thing I wanted to tell you about was just a little story of a different craft that we did a couple weeks ago. And it was basically just a sheet of paper, and it had on one side God's way and the other side man's way. And we ran a string across it, and on that string we hooked up a man made out of pipe cleaners. And the man was able to slide back and forth. And then we would start off and said, every decision that you make, you can either do it man's way or God's way. And so we gave them a couple scenarios and asked them how they would handle it. And the kids were able to slide the pipe cleaner man back and forth based on how they would handle that decision. And it was really neat because, each decision, they had to literally slide this man across. And we were able to tell them that every decision and everything that you do in life, you have to make a decision if you're going to do it your way or you're going to handle the thing God's way. And we had some great conversations at club with that illustration. And then about 3 weeks later, I was talking to a kid that got in trouble in school, and he'd handled a situation definitely his way and not God's way. And I said, "You remember that craft that we made with the pipe cleaner man?" And I started to say it had the sheet of paper with both ways on it. And he said, "Yeah, on one side it said God's way, and on one side it said man's way. And it means that every decision we have to make, we have to choose which way we're going to do it. And I know I didn't choose God's way that time." And he just goes into this in-depth, detailed discussion of almost everything I had taught him in my group about this craft. And he remembered every single little bit of it. And then the next week, this is a kid that goes to my church too. I pick him up and take him, and he comes to me after church and he says, "I want to be baptized." And him being baptized is him getting into heaven. That's his understanding of baptism right now. And so, the next place to start when a kid comes to you says, "Why do you want to be baptized?" And figure out what baptism means to him, and if he's ready to accept Christ as his Savior. And I know this kid's family. I know the situation that he grows up in, and it is not good. I've heard his mom literally curse this kid out and call him every name in the book. And it's a sad situation that this kid's in. But I know that if he chooses to follow God, everything in his life is going to be completely different. Nothing will be the same. The way that he sees problems handled will not be the way he handles problems. And the way that he loves to mouth off and fight will not be how he handles problems anymore. And so I said to this kid, I was like, "Are you willing to die to yourself?" And I explained what all that meant. I didn't use those terms. And I said, are you willing to choose God's way every time? And I said, do you remember this little craft that we did in club? And he says, yes. And he explains to me in great detail what that craft was and what this craft meant and how he needed to choose if he wanted to do things God's way or if he wanted to do things man's way. So the end of our conversation at church was not it was an invitation for him to count the cost of what it meant to walk with Jesus. Are you ready to make that decision? Are you ready for Jesus to have control over every single area of your life? Are you ready to give that up? And so I told him, in 2 days we'll go to club. I'll see you at club, and we'll talk more about it then. But for the next 2 days, every decision you make, ask yourself, do you want to do this your way or God's way? And so 2 days later, he made the decision that he didn't want to choose to do things God's way. And that actually the next day in his neighborhood, a kid started talking trash to him, and they got in a little fight. And I think he started to realize how tough this was going to be. And so he made a decision that he didn't want to be baptized. He didn't want to give his life to Christ yet, and he didn't want to tell me because he thought it would upset me. And so he actually tried to not go to club that day. And but his teacher, who I've been able to talk to during lunches and starting to have a relationship with, she knew that wouldn't upset me. She knew that him making that decision wouldn't stop us from being friends. And so she literally drug him down the club and wouldn't let him get on the bus and brought me to the side and said, he's afraid to tell you. And so that started another great conversation about how, just because you don't make a decision today, I'm not upset with you. We're still going to be friends, and you can tell me anything. And so 4 or 5 weeks later, he comes to me again after church and says, you know what, I want to be baptized again. And so we start to go through the gospel again and what it means. And he knew most of the answers this time. He had literally, he's been thinking about it. And God's moving in his heart, and he keeps saying he wants to be baptized because I don't think that he knows the words to say that he wants to get saved. And so I issued the same challenge again. I said, do you want to do everything God's way instead of your way? Are you ready to surrender your whole self to him? And that's where the issue is for him, is he's not quite ready to surrender yet. But every single time he comes to me and says, I want to be saved, I want to be baptized, the next couple of days is tough on him because the devil knows exactly where he's at, knows the decision that he's making, and he's seeking to the devil's attacking him where he's weak. And so again, the same thing kind of happened. God is speaking to him and he's listening, but the devil's attacking him. He doesn't know which way to go. And so I ask you to be in prayer for this kid. He's an awesome kid. Just pray for him. I love this kid to death, and he's in a huge battle where he doesn't know if he wants to do things man's way or surrender himself and do things God's way. So pray that he would continue to listen to God, and the attacks of the devil would stop. Another thing that I want you to pray for is the relationship that we're trying to build with the parents that are coming up. That we were going to do another My Life Matters parent-student day at the warehouse before the school year is over. And at this we're going to start to really push the My Life Matters summer camp, which is coming up. We're really excited for those first 2 full weeks of July that we get to spend 8 in the morning till 5 o'clock in the afternoon for 5 days with the kids. And we're expecting a big turnout this year. We've got about 175 kids registered between the two clubs, and so we're trying to raise money for all these kids to come to My Life Matters camp this summer. But if you look at the makeup of the two schools that we're in, close to 80 to 85% of all these kids are on reduced or free lunches at school. So the money is not there for these kids to pay the $100 a week. $100 a week to come to camp, but God has put it on our hearts to raise $10,000 for these 2 weeks of camp, so we would be able to pull off everything that we need to pull off. So be in prayer for the relationships with the parents, and be in prayer that the money would come in to send all these kids to camp this summer, and that the God would just bless us, and we would be able to continue to dive deep into these relationships with these kids. God is speaking to them. God is moving in them. These kids have no idea what it means, and so pray that we will be there to help interpret and to help teach them what God is trying to tell them. Thank you so much.